What did you do?
I stole a box of frozen zucchini from the market. They caught me when I left.
Why did you do that?
They were changing the prices of the lettuce that was already on the shelf. I said to the manager, "Did you make a pricing mistake?" He said, "No, there was a frost in Arizona and prices had gone up." And I said, "But not for the lettuce that's already on the shelf." I was planning on buying 2 heads of lettuce. The difference was 64 cents. The zucchini cost exactly 64 cents. How much was bail?
$500.
I'll give you a check.
That's Anne Bancroft, is a feisty woman who gets very, very sick, and then her dying request is to meet the real Greta Garbo in the bittersweet comedy Garbo Talks. One of 4 new movies we'll be reviewing this week on At the Movies, the movie review program. Across the aisle for me, Roger Ebert, film critic of the Chicago Sun-Times.
And this is Gene Siskel, film critic of the Chicago Tribune. In addition to Garbo Talks, we're also going to be reviewing The Bear, the story of the legendary Alabama football coach Bear Bryant. Windy City, a new story of love and lust and loss. And now Gene starts with a teenage sex comedy named The Wildlife.
The summer may be over, but The Wildlife isn't. The Wildlife is the latest teenage sex comedy to hit town, and it is being billed as some kind of sequel to the big hit of a couple of years ago, Fast Times at Ridgemont High, both films sharing the same writer. Now, I didn't think Fast Times at Ridgemont High was all that special, but compared with The Wildlife, Fast Times was one of the 10 greatest films of all time. The Wildlife tells the story of a graduating high school student learning about the wildlife in the summer before college starts. And for starters, he takes his own swinging singles apartment.
What time did your flight get in last night?
Really late. I was exhausted.
Ladies, hello. Hi, I'm Bill Conrad. I'm up in Unit 93, and you are...
Not interested.
Well, she's just one of his problems. Here comes another. To help pay his rent, he takes in a boarder, a loud and obnoxious friend.
See, the thing is, a lot of doctors live at this end of the complex. So we have to be quiet if we want to stay here.
Okay. Fantastic microwave, Bill. This is great, man. Did you hear about that lady who put a poodle in a microwave? Blew up. Yeah, try that sometime.
What are you doing? Hey, don't go through my drawers. This is my room.
Your big room's mine.
No, wait, Drake.
Hey, that's not fair, man.
Absolutely not.
Hey, you're the guy who needed a roommate. You're the guy who needed the bread.
Yeah?
So, let's flip.
Okay.
Heads. You lose.
2 out of 3.
No.
Come on, 2 out of 3. I found this place, please.
For you. Heads. You lose. You want to clear your stuff out of the room?
They're a real couple of lively guys, aren't they? That was Christopher Penn with the peroxided hair. You may remember him as the sweet country boy in Footloose, and he was very good in that picture. Not here. His character is a total boor. The Wildlife is, again, one of those teenage films that insults half the human race, women, with images of girls and women as pieces of meat to be had or as strippers to entertain the boys in the world. In one scene, and it's my least favorite scene in the picture, we see that same blonde-headed guy finally convinced at the end of the picture his reluctant girlfriend, she's now going to marry him, or at least have sex with him. It's hard to tell in this film. And how does he do it? He picks her up and he throws her in the back seat of his convertible. And that's a real shame. It's not funny. It's a real shame because that young woman, until that scene, had been the freshest, most lively, most independent soul in this picture. I hated to see her turn into a sap like everyone else in this film.
I'm in total agreement with you. This movie was a real depressing experience to sit through, and I just want to take one little area, and that would be the Christopher Penn character, which is based on the Sean Penn character that his brother played in
the guy
Fast Times.
The guy who said awesome at the end.
And yeah, and this time instead of awesome, the word is casual. And you know, it's funny. You know, you wouldn't think so, but awesome is a funnier word than casual.
Yes.
And Ridgemont High is a funnier movie than this is.
Yeah.
The difference, obviously, he's also ripped off from John Belushi in Animal House, who was a character that inspired half of these movies.
Right, Bluto.
Belushi was an animal. He was crushing beer cans against his head, but nevertheless, he created a person who behaved like this, and so we could believe him. This kid, frankly, and I'm sure he's a good actor, or maybe he has a career ahead of him, but in this movie, he's a geek.
Yeah.
And I knew that the moment he started eating lighted joints and swallowing them and then blowing out smoke from his stomach or something. I'm thinking, maybe it is possible to do that, but I don't want to see it done.
Either that or you see the whole picture. Another big running gag is seeing two guys run together and butt their heads.
Yeah, real terrific.
Not funny.
Yeah.
Not funny, and then it is mean. You know, when these films turn from comedy to meanness, and it's degrading, you sort of feel a little bit embarrassed of being there, and I felt that throughout this picture.
I agree. Next at the movies, Anne Bancroft and the audience share one thing in common. They both want to hear Garbo talk.
I want to meet Garbo.
Why?
Why shouldn't I? I'm dying.
Our next movie is named Garbo Talks, and it stars Anne Bancroft as a dying woman who has one last request. She wants to meet Greta Garbo before she dies. Anne Bancroft plays a woman who is accustomed to having her own way. The movie makes a big deal about how she's a brave, controversial activist. She's been that way all of her life, but most of the scenes that are supposed to demonstrate her legendary charisma end up making her look more like the kind of woman who basically just needs to calm down, maybe sit down in the corner for a while, be quiet, and be better later. She's fought for justice all of her days, but she's made her son into a wimp. And here's the scene where she tells the son, played by Ron Silver, about her last request.
Well, I called Mr. and Mrs. Kaczynski, and they wanted to know if you felt like visitors. So I told them I thought it might be better if they waited a couple of days.
Wilbur, I want to meet Greta Garbo. Yeah, I want to meet Garbo.
Mom, are you kidding?
No,
Mom, that's impossible.
it's not impossible. She lives right here in New York City.
Mother, why don't you just concentrate on getting better?
Oh, I want to meet Garbo.
Why?
Why shouldn't I? I'm dying.
She wants to meet Garbo.
It's like a last wish. It's not my last wish. I have a lot more. Just short on time.
So her son determines to find Greta Garbo and bring her to his mother's deathbed, and most of the movie is devoted to his search before he finally finds her in a New York flea market.
I have a minute of your time, please. I'm not a reporter or anything. It's about my mother. You gotta listen to me, please. My mother is very sick. She is at New York Hospital, room 808. She has a tumor. She doesn't have much time. She has no time. The doctor does not think she will last a week. She has this crazy wish. She wants to meet you. I have been looking for you for 3 months. She just wants to see you before she dies. That's all. She just wants to look at you. I don't know, just see you. Please. Please come with me. It's a few minutes, that's all. 5 minutes. 1 minute. Please, there's not even time to think about it.
So, not to give away too much, Garbo turns and goes to the hospital, which is really tricky because in doing so, she always has to keep her back to the camera. One of the strange things about Garbo Talks is that you're never sure if it's a comedy or maybe it's supposed to be a bittersweet tribute to this colorful woman Anne Bancroft plays, but it doesn't much matter. I don't think it works either way. Bancroft does not make her character into a likable person. She comes across more as a self-centered scold with a headache, and her son's adventures in trying to find Garbo turn into labored bad jokes that don't pay off unless your idea of humor is somebody falling off a bicycle. The movie gets even worse after they do find Garbo. I don't want to give away the ending, but let me say this much. The film's climax turns instantly in one of those patented scenes that actresses love so much when Bancroft gets to have a long monologue about her whole life and her philosophy and her insights into existence, while the camera zooms slowly in on her noble suffering, and she seems to assume that Garbo either won't talk or has nothing to say. Garbo doesn't get a chance to talk, and I got news for the people who made this movie. Maybe Anne Bancroft isn't the only one who would have been interested in what Garbo might have had to say.
Well, I'm very glad you didn't give away anything about the ending. You were quite well overstayed. By the way, Roger's comments are available if you send in a dime to the Merkel Press as an illustrated comic book, which will explain the whole show to you if you missed anything. But now let's get into the real facts. First of all, about Garbo talking, you're right.
Yeah.
I wanted to hear Garbo talk, and so I'd like to make an offer to her if she's watching our show, and I know she watches it every week.
Okay.
Likes me better than you, she told me. I'm at the Chicago Tribune. Call me up. I'll do an interview if I have time. Now, about
That's a very interesting. Does that go for everybody watching or just Greta Garbo?
Oh, Greta Garbo.
Sure, a lot of people would like to be interviewed by you.
No, the Greta Garbo.
Okay.
It would be great.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be great?
Yes, it would. Yeah.
And that's true. Now, see, they have a good idea for this movie, so you don't have to overplay it. That's what they blew it.
That's right.
It's a marvelous idea for a movie. So why does Anne Bancroft have to play such an extreme character that's so obviously written? Why does Ron Silver, who's been a very good supporting actor in a couple of movies, usually with a beard on, why does he have to play this little suffering, wimpy guy? You're quite right, with the nose full all the time. They didn't have to do it. Play the idea. Play it real. Don't play its handkerchief.
It could have been a nice little movie about nice, simple people.
Sure.
And then an actress could have been hired to play Greta Garbo, who could have come on and could have said whatever. I mean, what would Garbo do in a situation like that? We never find out in this movie. She's just an icon.
Yeah.
She's the back of a head moved from one shot to another. I mean, I get so tired of that hat and that hairdo.
Right.
And a couple of shadowy, you know, things in the corner.
Well, the great thing is, of course, there are clips of her, the real Garbo, in her films. And of course, she's extraordinary. And maybe this will trigger some kind of renaissance for Garbo's films, although they play quite
well,
often.
listen, I have a message for Greta Garbo, too, if she's watching our show. If this movie comes on cable, instead of watching this, watch one of your own old movies. That'd be my advice.
Much better advice. Coming up next at the movies, a film about a bear who was a god to many football fans.
Who is this man? What's he doing here? They call me the bear. And I've come to make you kin.
Our next movie is about the late Paul Bryant, the all-time winningest coach in college football history. And he didn't accomplish that honor at some rinky-dink school. On the contrary, he turned teams at the University of Kentucky and at Texas A&M and his native Alabama into real champs. And how did he do it? The new movie, The Bear, Bryant's nickname, attempts to find an answer. And the answer, it turns out, has very little to do with football, at least according to this film. According to this picture, Bryant was simply a natural orator, a stern disciplinarian, and a great salesman. We never really learned his skill as a football coach. Gary Busey, often one of our best young actors, has the difficult job of playing Bryant from college age to retirement age. He's much more convincing in the early years. For example, here, trying to convince a farm kid's father to let his boy play for Bryant's Alabama team.
Oh, that's good soil. What's your yield?
About 16 bushels to acre, give or take a little.
You know what? I don't think there's enough potash in there. Now, what I'd like to do is take some of this dirt back to the university and run a test on it. And then put you in a test acre. And next springtime when you harvest, I bet you doubles your yield. I bet you we triple it. And as a matter of fact, I bet you on Timothy's education that I'm right. Because I know my dirt. I grew up in the dirt. Shoot, I bet you all are thinking, now what is he doing here? Is he selling the University of Alabama? Or is he selling fertilizer? Well, I'm doing a little of both.
That's a very nice scene. And when Paul Bryant speaks as a coach in this film, as in this pregame pep talk, the bear does hold our attention.
Just about showtime. You're going to get a chance to go putting on your act for a whole lot of people. Now, your mamas and daddies is who you're going to be putting it on for first. Coaches and teachers, that's another. Schoolmates. Let's not forget the sweethearts. probably going to be more people out there than you've ever seen in your life. Not to mention the millions or so people sitting at home watching it on national television. Now, I just want you to roll your sleeves up and go out there and have a good time. And put a smile on your faces. And then hit somebody. And knock them down. Then help them up. Then tell them you'll be right back. Show your pride. And your class. Everything will work out fine. I promise. Let's go out and play some football.
And when he says, I promise, actually you do believe him, and that's a tribute to Gary Busey. Unfortunately, there are moments in The Bear, many moments, where Paul Bryant doesn't speak to his troops, and those moments are quite awful, full of gaping errors in movie logic and absolutely lackluster football action scenes. Bryant's personal life in the film is treated like a story for a child's little golden book, and the movie swings awkwardly between old football film footage and stagey contemporary recreations. It's really too bad that this movie wasn't simply released as a condensed soundtrack. Paul Bryant's best speeches as read by Gary Busey. I'd buy that. It would last about 15 minutes, and it would be quite entertaining. Unfortunately, this movie goes on about an hour and a half longer.
I agree with you, Gene. I thought it was a really deadly, awfully, dreadfully boring movie. And one of the things that I was surprised about, apart from the Bryant story, which comes off in this movie like a total press release from the University of Alabama, you would think that it might be interesting, this movie might be interesting to football fans.
Yes, they won't.
There was no football strategy in this movie. At one point, for example, they have those big canvases around the practice field, and the reporter from Nashville is trying to get in to see, and the Bear has some new strategy. Do you ever find out what the strategy is? Well, do you ever see it in a game?
Right.
Not really.
No, you don't. It's the wishbone, and he gets it from Darrell Royal at Texas. But, you know, yes, people are sophisticated enough. They'd like to know a little bit about football. You don't learn a thing about football.
Look at the final game that he plays in the Liberty Bowl against Illinois. It's just a montage of Illinois and Alabama playing each other. You never even know for 3 minutes at a time who's ahead.
That's because it wasn't that close of a game, and that's why they had to hide that fact. Here's the other thing. The model for film biographies, I think, is Patton, written by Francis Coppola. And you know what was so great about that? I know you do. It was that you couldn't tell which side he was on, which side the film was on. Was it for Patton? Was it against him? You know, and this film is just obvious. You call it a press release? Sure, it's just a great tribute to a wonderful guy. The real guy was more interesting than this film makes
after you see this movie, you think, gee, Bear Bryant, he didn't need to be a football coach. They could have made the same movie about the head of the Rotary Clubs or the president of the bank or something. It's just not a sports movie. Next at the movies, a story about a guy who loses his best girl and says goodbye to his best pal, all told against the bittersweet backdrop of the Windy City.
What happened to courtship? Please, dear God, there's got to be some old-fashioned men out there. Some people who want to take their time.
Yes, Aroma's back, and Roger's got him. It's time for the stinker of the week, the week's worst movie.
Yeah, and what a big yawn. I know he saw the same movie I saw. Our stinker this week is named Windy City, and it does for Chicago what Until September did for Paris. In other words, nothing. I think it's safe to say that we hated both of these pictures.
Yes.
Windy City is one of the soppiest movies I've seen in a long time. A cute, narcissistic, unfocused story about all those wonderful people who must be wonderful because the movie keeps telling us how wonderful they are. The movie stars John Shea as a guy who wants to be a writer, and who tells us that when he was growing up in Chicago, he was part of this wonderful gang of wonderful guys who promise each other that someday when they grew up they'd do wonderful things. And then he meets this wonderful girl, but they break up. Then the gang starts to break up, and then the guy's best friend comes down with a fatal disease, and just really too sad for words. Gene, here's the scene where the wonderful girl proposes to the wonderful guy.
You know, for a smart girl, you really don't understand men.
Well, then teach me. I want to learn.
All right, men are different from women.
I know that.
No, you don't know that. Men are different from women. Men have to get their lives together before they can think about making other plans. I mean, look at my life. Except for you. It's a total mess.
It's not a mess. It's just a little messy, and I can help you with that. Danny, I'm very good at helping. What?
You're supposed to let the man ask.
Great.
Now, you really have to ask if people would talk like that to each other if they didn't know they were in the movie.
They would not talk that way.
In real life, one person or the other would say, why are you talking so funny?
Yeah, all cutie. And, you know, like all this. You remember the scene in Annie Hall where the boring couple is walking across the street and they said, we don't have a thought in our heads or something? That's that couple in this movie. They are really boring.
And, you know, apart from that, the really thing that I hate most about this movie is that it's another example, like Garbo Talks, which is actually a better movie than this, of what I call the dying heroic person genre, in which because somebody is dying and every once in a while we go to their bedside, it's supposed to redeem all of the rest of this idiotic behavior because they're so noble and it's so sad that they're dying that therefore everybody else can act like an idiot and talk like a dummy because of being ennobled by the fact of this death.
And one more thing, and then we'll get on with our summary, which I think is going to be more interesting than this review, and that is the following. You know it's a bad movie when somebody's dying in the film and you want them to die a little quicker.
Right.
Now, to sum up our reactions to the main movies on the show, we agreed on all 4 films, and we agreed that we didn't like any one of the 4 films. Starting with The Wildlife, the stupid teenage sex comedy with Christopher Penn. 2 downturned thumbs for that. Now, I like Garbo Talks a little bit more than Roger. No one could like it less, but still no recommendation for me. And 2 more downturned thumbs for the Coach Paul Bryant story, The Bear, although we both did think that Gary Busey did good work in a very tough role. And finally, 2 downturned thumbs and every other finger for our stinker of the week, Windy City, the sappy, youthful reminiscence.
So, 4 movies, 8 downturned thumbs.
Yeah, the only thing that we can recommend is the Garbo movies, but not Garbo Talks.
Yeah, go see an old movie at a Revival Theater this week. Maybe we can do better next week. I hope so. That's it for this week. Next week at the movies, Bill Murray, one of the most successful comedians in the movies, in his first serious dramatic film called The Razor's Edge. We'll have that review next week, and until then, we'll see you at the movies.